out, and we caught so much black bass that day, it was unbelievable. It was one of the best fishing trips we ever were on. That's one of my favorite stories, but there's so many other ones. The night we went to Solid Island and fished all night long and caught bluefish. I mean, big fish. It was.
That makes me think about, just in terms of fellowship, the kitchen table of your own home. And that's where I met you, and that's where I met many a mentor, including Mr. Harvey Little, who is also an ancestor, but also truly influential in so many artists' vision and careers. And but that was the gravitational force, you know, fellowshipping over food, laughing and talking, sharing ideas, showing what interested you and what something you read that really taught so many of us and a lot of us younger people. It was a privilege to sit and listen to you all speak. So, and just in terms of some of the artwork that you all created together, and when I think of Professor Platt, I think of that sparkle in his eye when he saw something that was really different and was really intriguing. And so, have you kind of seen that sparkle throughout?
Yeah.
You know, you kind of know when he got the vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, like I was saying, he would always talk to me about ideas, what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Let's talk about his digital photography, which is new. I mean, over the last 5, 7, 8, 9 years, you know, all before that, Michael was drawing and painting. But he decided to get into digital photography. Well, I was already a photographer. And you mentioned Hollywood. Hollywood and I were friends as well. But I'm old school, like Holly. And Mike wanted to do this digital stuff. And Mike was always encouraged me to go for it. Like everybody he's ever been with, that's one thing about him that was matters. He never quit on any idea. He might not have got it right the first time, but he continued to work at it until he got it right. There's one thing that he told me when he started doing digital photography. He didn't mind taking pictures, and he didn't mind painting the models. But sitting down at that computer was a whole nother ballgame. He said, man, I can't get the image to come out the way I see it. And I'm saying, well, what's the problem? I have to figure out this computer. And he would. I mean, he studied, he pushed buttons, and he found out what would happen until eventually he began to make images based on where he saw them in his head. And he told me that. He said, it was roughly around 2 years, he told me, he said, man, I finally got it. And I knew what he meant, you know. So, yeah, he never gave up on trying to accomplish and work with new ideas, new technologies, just something brand new. He never liked repetition, you know, old work, always something fresh, always something new, all the time.
Right. And he said something to that effect a number of years ago when talking to him about his process. And, you know, he was saying that he likened it to one of the blues singers, Tom Waits. And he said, oh goodness. Something to the effect of, in order to receive the song, you got to be ready for it. And that was the practice and the discipline in something of getting back on the horse, getting back on the train, trying, not just going to happen upon you. He gives it to you.
Right.
If I could say something, that's something that I remember Michael and Harley talking about. And Michael, for those of you who have the catalog, the photograph of Michael was not a recent one, but it's one that was done by our friend Harley Little, which was a very important person and image, for Michael. So but Harley would tell Michael they were talking about photography, and I guess it works the same. He says you don't go after something, you wait for it to come to you. And Harley was one of the photographers whose eyes told him when the subjects were ready to give themselves to him.
Subjects and light.
Yes,
Those two
yes.
could see light in a way that I've never seen another human being. Mr. Harley, as I recall, he wore glasses, but he would take his glasses off and be able to squint to focus and see clearer than any glasses could ever create. To see exactly where the light is and how things need to be focused. And Professor Platt did the same way. I mean, they knew exactly from which direction light was coming in any environment they took. And they were able to manipulate light in such an interesting and beautiful way that was truly kind of a spiritual thing. Mr. Davis, I mean, you have so much history and knowledge of Washingtonian artists, and certainly Professor Platt stands out among them. What are some of the major shifts and evolutions that you witnessed, and what did he kind of insert differently to DC art?
Yeah, Michael was definitely an ultimate image maker. And I met him when he was doing printmaking. And like Dwight mentioned, he started to work with the digital photography and digital images. And what I most enjoyed in talking with him, because we used to go over there and we used to, of course, have a lot of shows and so forth, was his vision. He actually was the ultimate vision maker. And so he created images that, and I've told many people this, that you would never ever see. We were talking about, his ability to actually see. And it was about the spirit, and about, he was searching for spirits, and he was searching for things. So he made images, but they were more importantly made to actually heighten our awareness of things. The figure was his primary goal. I mean, to create a figure and work with the figure and like painting the models. And I know this was a rich experience I never had a chance to view, but the after effects of how did you come up with this? How long were you, this been in your mind, body, and soul? And so what I saw and how he created made him a unique individual to the Washington community. So I've worked with many Australian Aboriginal artists as well, and brought them to the gallery around here. And the vision that they had because of being out in the desert or being in a place that is alone and spirit-filled, Michael was searching for that and found it. And so to the Washington community, he created something that was totally new. I mean, not just the Washington community, but I would say in the nation, and how he, re-imaged the image to the point where it became something new and innovative. And that was his search, and that was his goal. And he definitely continued to do that all along the way. And I agree, he never ever gave up in terms of, finding out and picking these things up. So yeah, we had a chance to do a lot of different things together as far as that's concerned, yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned the spirit, and I would like to bring Ms. Maisha Atrice into the conversation, because as a model, you embody the spirit that he was creating and showing to us. And so I'm wondering, number one, from your perspective, what was his process like, experiencing it as a model? But then, two, was there a transportation happening, a departure from this realm into the spiritual realm in the midst of that process.
So what I remember of the process was music, the kitchen table, Carol Beane being in the background somewhere, always, and him working to get the paint to a temperature that's comfortable for the mom, myself. And I looked at his tools as ritualistic because he didn't just use a regular paintbrush, but his, the fine hair and his got this wooden, beautiful carved wooden candle, and again, he's heating up the paint to make sure that we're comfortable and working to make the model as comfortable as possible, because I'm standing in the middle of your kitchen naked right now. That can be a little awkward. So the process for me began there, right? And then moving into the studio space, and he's still just talking about all the things. I think what I remember most about Michael, now that I've had time to reflect since his transition, is that he's a constant teacher. And that's to everyone, every generation. Dwight is his peer. He has elders, and I'm certainly a child, but he's teaching everyone always about something. And so the conversations about life were happening in that space. And then his focus with me in particular was my gaze, my eyes. So we were talking about that, like what it conjured up for people outside of an artistic space where you're not necessarily able to utilize a deep stare, but what it means to him as he's taking this picture and where he's able to go with it. And then taking a beat throughout the session to go and analyze the pictures on the computer and determine if he's gotten what he's looking for, or if he needs to go back into that space. And like Carol said, I hadn't heard of him taking a picture for a particular purpose, but being moved to take pictures to gather them so that when the spirit moved him to create with whatever textures he had, that piece would already be there, that figure is already there. And as his former student, I remember, I'll say this briefly, in class, I was already over it. It was my last semester at Howard. Anyone knows Howard, you know why I was over it. And so I'm sitting there, and the professor is late, and so I'm talking shit. And then I hear a harmonica, and I'm like, what in the fuck is happening? And then this big old black man with a lock walks in the room, blowing a harmonica. I'm like, no way, this is my professor. Not humanly possible. This is my professor. And he walked in, very casual, nonchalant. He said, there is no syllabus. I want you to go out, take 100 pictures of textures, and meet me at my house. And then he walked out. He had strong feelings about textures. He had very, very strong feelings about textures. He had strong feelings about sending his students out to explore the nuances of the macro. And it really opened my eyes up to that as well. And then another story is walking to his house and knocking on the door for the first time, because he was so kind to open up his house to give us the resources that Howard was not able to offer at that time. So he was opening his home so that we had access to the printer, to the machinery that wasn't on campus. But knocking on that door and then having my Spanish professor open the door. I am at the wrong door. I'm sure I had skipped her class for that day. So they both opened the door with the most kindness, and I myself as a photographer got to see the value of not just the textures but the layers and how you can create from that. And so over time, watching him use all these different sessions that we had and putting them in different environments with multitude of textures was always very interesting for me. No, I personally had not traveled there, but I could see him in the creation process, his mind moving a million miles per minute.
Amen. And would you agree that the the textures were also a mode of time travel. The textures and layers, because the more aged a surface was, the more attractive it was, and the more history and the more stories it had or it had to receive. So, certainly.
Yeah, I think I've been deeply moved by how he was able to bring his travels back through the pictures. The environments that we would seemingly dismiss as abandoned, rotten, became portals for the spirit world. And I remember seeing the images, was it from Paris or London, when he was doing the Dreams series? You know what I'm talking about, Carol? It's the top of the buildings.
Oh, yeah.
London?
Paris.
Paris. And I remember how refreshing that was, because I was so used to him using like the damp, rustic, worn spaces, but that was new. And either way, it had the same impact of he went somewhere and saw it for the first time and decided to bring it back definitively and then place the models in that space. And so I like to think that when you travel, the reason why there's any type of jet lag is because your soul is trying to catch up to your physical body. And I think that